Good evening and welcome to the November 13th work session of the East Point City Council. Madam Deputy City Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilmember Shropshire. Councilmember Robinson. Councilmember Renee is not here yet. Councilmember Bailey. Councilmember Cummings. Councilmember Cook. Councilmember Butler. Councilmember Gordon. Madam Mayor, you have a quorum.
So, let's look at the agenda items and see what can go on consent. We need to talk about 23, 24, any objection to consent? 25, any objection to consent? 26, any objection to consent? Oops, I flipped the wrong way. 27, any objection to consent? 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 'Councilman Butler, you good on this one? Yep. $38, 39. No cost lease, we like those. 40. Public hearing. You got a different 40. That's my 41. Yep. 40. Interstate restoration to restore police case files damaged. That should be consent. 41 is a public hearing. Is the applicant here for 1486 Willingham? Yeah, we definitely need to talk about this one. Public hearing, special use permit. This one is coming back. We already had the public hearing on this one, right? Let's see the applicant's representative. 43. Oh yeah, this is discussion. Is the applicant here? 44, we definitely need discussion. And then 45, 6, and 7. All right, let's go back to previous agenda items. We'll have an update on policing. Number 5, Councilmember Gordon, tonight. Number 6, Councilmember Gordon. I think the chief says they already got those from this district. Okay. To another item, another agenda, just remove. I don't see him yet. You can ask him in his update on policing. Remove item number 6. Item number 7, Councilmember Shropshire. Tonight. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, Councilmember Robertson. 13, Councilmember Butler and Gordon. December work session? Okay. 14, Councilmember Butler. Okay. 15, Councilmember Cummings. That 12 and 15, 12, no, not 12. Where is it? 10 and 15 can be discussed together. 16, Councilmember Gordon and Cummings. I'm sorry, what'd you say? December. 17, this one probably should be brief. I don't know if they'll have any updates. 18, we need updates from staff. 19, depends on what the discussion is on the audit. Like the forensic audit will help us with that. We have 20, and then 20 came from last council meeting. 21, sole source for SCADA from East Point Power. Does anyone have any objection to this going to consent? 21 can go to consent. The street name change definitely need to be discussed. Okay. So, Madam City Clerk, Deputy City Clerk, I have 21 and then 24 through 40 on consent. And item number 6 is removed. Items number 13, 14, and 16 on the December work session. And then the remainder we will discuss tonight. All right, we will start with our first presentation, Mr. King, Classification and Compensation Study Project Summary.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, good evening, Mayor, Council, staff, and guests. First up, we're going to have Iris Jesse, who will come forward, give an overview, along with representatives from Evergreen Solutions, who will join her as well.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. Janisa Elias and I presented some information to you in October. And after some discussion, there were some questions that were raised that we were able to get to our consultants who are here tonight, who can respond to those. You should also have information related to the dollar amounts for $17 an hour. If you all recall, we started out with $16.15 an hour, and you asked us to look at $17 and $20 an hour. So that information is provided to you. We further provided information by department on what it would cost for each of those hourly wages. But at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Mark Holcomb, who's going to come and talk with you about the questions that you raised last time, provide you answers to those, and then he's able to answer any other questions that you may have. Mark.
All right, thank you, everybody, and I appreciate you all having me back here again. I do have the questions written right here, so I'll go ahead and read the question and then give the response. And of course, if anybody has any further clarification that you'd like or any other questions for me, I'll be happy to answer. I will start with one I think was more of a clarifying or definitional question. One of the questions that we got sent was, what is range spread? So on some of the documents that we have, it talks about a range spread, and range spread is a measure of the difference between the minimum and the maximum pay for a particular pay grade. And so when you look at a range spread, for example, if you see a range spread of 50%, that's just telling you that the maximum of that pay grade is 50% larger than the minimum. And so if you have a larger range spread, there's a bigger gap and it's a wider pay range. If you have a smaller range spread, it is a narrower pay range. The minimum and maximum are closer together. So that's all that range spread would denote there, is basically how wide are the ranges, how much space is there between the minimum and the maximum. With some of the other questions that got more into sort of the intent or the outcomes from the study or particular items there, one of them asked about how an employee's certifications would impact an employee's salary in this plan. And we did want to notate the certification pay is separate from the pay plan, and it's separate from the costs and the models that we have in this solution file or the recommendations here. And one of the reasons I think we get into this a little bit more with some of the other questions is certifications in many organizations, including here as well, we know can sometimes be handled at the department level, where specific departments will have certifications that they believe are valuable for their employees to have or for certain positions to have, whereas other departments will not value a certification in the same way. And so our recommendation would be for departments to continue to have that level of autonomy with certifications while adding in some component of review at the city level, and essentially having human resources involved to add some consistency to the certification requirements or the certification payments given out to employees. And so again, for the certifications at this point, they are not included in these costs. Because they would be varying based on the department and the actual individuals filling the roles with the certifications per department. One of the other questions asked about advancement opportunities, and so how would employees be able to advance in the proposed pay plans? The pay plans that we have proposed and the actual placement of employees into the pay plans. Now that's done at a one single point in time. So everybody that's being recommended for a specific placement and the costs associated with that are based on placing those employees into the plan right now. However, the pay plan does allow for advancement and does allow for essentially the opportunity for promotions or for job leveling to take place under this pay plan. It's one of the strengths that we like about the pay plans, where it does have a nice consistent progression. If you look at I believe you have the sheets there with the Excel sheets. If you look at that pay plan, the consistent progression through the plan does allow the city to create additional levels, to have promotional opportunities for employees to advance throughout their career. And so again, we would say that yes, this pay plan does allow for and does incorporate progression into the plan. But of course, each individual person is only recommended for their immediate placement into the plan. There's no costing that's gone into this to involve promotions or advancement into the future. One of the next questions then we got was, I guess we had used some language previously that says one of the options, so the hybrid parity, quote unquote, can erase performance gains. And so somebody had asked for a clarification of what exactly that meant and how would it erase those performance gains. So with the hybrid parity methodology, the way we would say that it could could erase performance gains is because this methodology is based on time. So it's based on an employee's time with the city overall, but it's also based on their time within their current classification. If you take two example employees, let's pretend they started at the exact same day. Maybe they were promoted at the exact same day. So they've been here 10 years, 5 years ago, they both promoted at the same time. But since that point, employee A might have been a higher performer. So they may have gotten bigger raises over the years. Employee B was a lower performer. Maybe they did not get the same raises that employee A got over the last 5 years. They would have the exact same recommendation with the hybrid parity approach because they have the same amount of time with the city and they have the same amount of time in their current classification. So therefore, if employee A over the years is now making $2 an hour more, let's say, than employee B, the parity approach could put them at the exact same salary now. And that's what we would say was erasing performance gains. Now, an important caveat for that is, one important thing to note here is we do not take away salary from anybody. And so if the projected salary for employee A and employee B both was lower than employee A's salary, they would still maintain some of that performance difference between employee A and employee B, because we would not take away any money from employee A. They might have gained a little bit more than the model would have predicted, in which case they would keep that gain. But if the model did predict a salary that was higher than employee A was making, employee A and employee B would make the exact same salary going forward, which would have erased that difference that would have been present between employee A and employee B. So the next question that I have on the list here is it asks about crafting a compensation philosophy to guide future pay decisions. So it says, does this pay plan and will the consultants use the study to craft a philosophy to use to guide future pay decisions? And so one of the things we want to note here is we cannot and we would not craft a philosophy ourselves, of course, to govern pay decisions for the city. That's something that you all would make the decision here. Typically, again, HR or the city manager may be involved with that process. They may take a pay philosophy forward to council, and you all, of course, would adopt or decide that, yes, we like this philosophy, or no, we choose not to go there. One of the examples of something that would go into that philosophy would be, are you trying to be a market leader, and to what degree? So your decision to adopt a $17 per hour pay plan or a $20 per hour pay plan, that would be part of the compensation philosophy that you all would be adopting. Now, with that being said, we are very happy to work with HR to basically put into writing a philosophy that you all would want to adopt. We're very happy to do that. But of course, the decisions for that would need to be made by the city in terms of, where do you all see yourselves versus the market? Do you want to make it a defined written philosophy that you're going to lead the market, or you're going to be at a certain percentage of the market? Or would you want to have a more broad statement that says you would like to be competitive with the top payers in the market? Those are the example, some of the example decisions that we would be able to help you all talk through. And we're certainly very happy to help put that into writing. But of course, again, the decision-making process is something that the city will have to determine. Because we can't make a philosophy that would say you're going to spend X number of dollars, or you're going to be at X percentage of the market. Obviously, that's not our place to make that decision or make statements on that. So we have another, and I guess the last question I have on here again was another clarification talking about certifications and how it is a department-wide or differences by department. So I'll just reiterate here again, the question at the bottom I think ties back to what I mentioned about certifications. We do believe that HR should have some role in that even if it's just reviewing certification asks from different departments to make sure there is some consistency. The benefit that HR can add to that process is, if you do have two different departments with the same position in both departments, you don't want to treat those employees differently unless there's a substantial reason why you would do so. If the job duties are such that it would indicate one department would need that certification and one would not. So HR would be able to actually do that review and make sure that there is that consistency across departments. And so we do propose, again, departments all are going to have their own needs. They're going to have their own budgets. They're going to have their own concerns when it comes to certifications. But adding HR as sort of a verification to that process to add that consistency, we think would be a strong thing that you all could add and could look to do. So those are the questions that I had indicated specifically that we wanted answers to tonight. Are there any additional questions from anybody here in the room, or anything else I can address for you all today?
I think before we open it up for questions, it would be helpful, I know it would be for me, if you could refresh our recollection on the different types. So it's base minimum, hybrid, class parity, like that terminology of the different options.
Sure, absolutely. So the bring to minimum option is the cheapest option. And essentially what a bring to minimum option would do is it would only place your employees into the new pay scale. And if an employee was already making above the minimum and they were already inside that new pay scale that we're recommending, it would not propose any additional change. And so again, as an example, if you started the new pay scale at $20 an hour, if an employee in that $20 per hour pay grade was making $20.05 per hour, they would see no adjustment from that because they're already above the minimum. If an employee was currently making $15 an hour, they would go all the way from 15 up to 20. So that's what that bring to minimum approach would do. It is the cheapest option, but it is also one that can cause some compression. We would certainly recommend, if you do adopt that approach, you absolutely want to pay attention to compression going forward into the future. It is something you're going to want to address because it can cause a significant concern. Many cities do have to adopt that option from a cost perspective in the beginning, but it is something you're going to want to look at as time goes forward. A class parity approach is very similar to hybrid parity approach. And again, the hybrid parity we talked about before gives credit to employees based on their total time with the city and their time in their specific classification. That's the hybrid. It looks at both. The class parity would make the same adjustments, but it only looks at the amount of time an employee has in their current job title. And so it would actually deal with spacing employees out within their pay ranges based on the amount of time that they've spent in their classification. So again, in that same example we looked at a moment ago, if you had somebody who was making $20.05, the bring to minimum would leave them at that spot there. The class and hybrid approaches would both look at how much time they had in their classification and then hybrid within the total time with the city as well. And it would actually give an additional increase to space that employee away from the minimum of the pay range. And so the logic there, the reason that you would want to do that is, again, if you had an employee who's been in their classification, let's say for 10 years, and you move the minimum up, and they're basically making the minimum, that means they've been there for 10 years, but they're going to make the same amount as a brand new hire. And so typically that's not going to be an equitable outcome. That's not something you're going to want to see. So the class parity would move them up based on time and position, and the hybrid would move them up based on both time and position and time with the city overall. Did we use?
And then there's a 10-year.
That's what I was looking to see, which other options we had
We have
costed
a
out there.
10-year parity, and we have a minimum plus selective hybrid.
Okay, perfect. So the 10-year parity, again, does the same thing as the class and the hybrid, but it only looks at the time with the city overall. And so again, the difference between those three, if you had an employee who'd been with the city for 20 years, but they promoted into their role, to their current role 5 years ago, the class parity is only going to look at those 5 years they've spent in their current job. So it will only give them 5 years of credit. They'll get a small adjustment. The 10-year parity approach will look at all 20 years. And so even though they just promoted, even though they're brand new into their role, or not brand new, they've had a couple years, but they're newer into their role, it's going to move them a long way because they've got 20 years of experience. So it's going to put them up near the maximum of the range. And the hybrid, again, will take a blend of the two. So it won't move them to 5 only. It won't move them the full 20. It'll put them in the middle of that. They'll move about 12 and a half years worth of credit, again, to make sure that they're getting some of the credit for that total time with the city. They've been here. They've been in service with the city. They're learning things. They're gaining some of that knowledge. But it does respect the fact that, again, with a promotion comes new job roles, new responsibilities. They are not an expert in that new job when they move up into it. And so that's the intent of the hybrid role there. With the hybrid plus, or the bring them in plus selective hybrid, that was a way for us to identify certain classifications that would have gotten that hybrid parity approach. So it would have applied that hybrid approach to some roles, but it would not have applied it to every single role across the city. It was a method we looked at as somewhat of a cost-saving measure to make sure we could present something that would be a little bit more affordable. And so the selective approach would have been, again, certain classifications would have been identified to receive that hybrid approach, and the remaining classifications would get the bring to minimum approach.
And your recommendation?
So looking at the recommendations and in consultation with HR, we were looking at that bring to minimum plus the hybrid approach. But again, part of that was, again, that financial consideration. Of course, we like the hybrid approach, overall, if it's something that could be afforded. But again, looking at the realities of the situation, I think that was an attempt to bridge the gap between affordability and an approach that we felt would be an excellent fit for the city.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Cook, Councilmember Butler.
Thank you, and I'm going to try not to get lost in the weeds on this.
Okay.
I went through a major salary change once. It can be quite entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
Two things, and I'm going to be brief with my questions, and you can be brief with your response. One of the key points of making any change work is the ability of the line management to understand what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
As it relates to how this change in salary and merit review
Mm-hmm.
impacts what you already have. So I'm anticipating that this program is going to have a very intensive training curve, if I want to use that, before we can really go live with it. So I wish the HR director Godspeed. Now, the next thing that you have not mentioned that everybody to a degree, every city is dealing with, and that is, how do you make a change this massive and still deal with your hot buttons.
Mhm.
For the average city, the hot button is public safety.
Mhm.
The next item might be IT.
Mhm.
And then from that point on, it could be anything else.
Mhm.
So how do we actually make those necessary adjustments and try to hold true to what this plan is trying to do for us?
So to be as brief as I can with a response then, and to keep it short here,
And you can be briefer than I was explaining.
I will try. It's not my strength to be brief, but again, with the recommendations that we've made and with the hybrid, selective hybrid that we did try to focus on the hot button classifications and the classifications that we noted with market differentials and concerns that are included in the study. Now, we recognize not every single classification that the city is included in this study. And so again, while we focused to the extent that we could on those hot button classifications, it is a true statement that the city would need to potentially look at some other classifications at the conclusion of the compensation study. And so that is something that the city would, have to tackle in the future. Of course, we'd be happy to assist with that, but we did try to focus on those classifications that we noted as biggest concern in the study. That is something we tried to focus on.
Thank you. I'm concerned with the data that was presented to me. I need some clarification as to how to understand this.
Okay.
So if we look at the first line item, it says,
Pull it up.
if we look at the first line item, we have 50 worst properties. So
Which tab are you on?
I'm on the very first one.
Okay. So is it the pay grades tab? It's on the screen. Is that the one?
No, it's not that one.
Okay.
Exhibit 2, yes, this one.
So, okay.
All right. So you have it here as 50 worst properties. This is not what I'm looking at.
This is not the tab? Okay.
The departments and titles.
Yes, I think it has 50 worst, but it doesn't have the numbers. I'm looking at this right here.
Oh, that's okay. That's not the exhibit we have. That's the. Oh, that might be cost.
Yes, is that it? Yeah, that's it.
Okay, and scroll to the left. I think he's on $17 an hour.
Go
Yeah.
back to the very first one.
There you go.
Yes, okay. So we're looking at changes. Explain to me what is the 14.9?
The
14,976.
Okay, so the 14,976, that is the total cost under the bring to minimum option for that first department. It's 50 worst properties. So it's just the department name that we had in the HR database that was sent to us, the employees that we have in that database, how they would be impacted by each cost option. So that's where the 14,976 comes from.
All right, so now tell me what the 29,775.
The 29,775 is the class parity approach. That's how much they would receive under that approach.
So, okay, so the 14,976 would be the dollar amount it would take to bring each employee up to parity. Is that what we're saying?
The 14,976 would be how much it would cost to place the employees into their pay ranges.
So, but you're not talking about giving someone a $14,000 raise.
No, that could be divided among, I don't know how many employees it would be, but that could be 10 different employees. It could be 2 employees. It could be, 20. I don't know the number. The number of employees is not listed on here at all.
All right, so very good. And so now, line C, D, and E, and F are just the differences between, that's taking us one person and what the difference would be in their pay. Should we do that, or what is?
It's not one person, it'd be the whole department. So again, C, D, and E would be, so on that first line, the 14,976, that's how much it would cost to put every single person in that department into the pay ranges. And then line C would be how much would it cost to put them in the pay ranges and give them an adjustment for the amount of time they've spent in their positions only. And then line D would be how much time in their position and partial credit for their total time with the organization overall. And then line E would be to give them total credit for all of their time at the city. So we're not doing a blending, not looking at the time and position. If you'll notice, some departments, like the 50 worst properties, it's relatively close, which indicates you don't have a lot of people in that department that have gotten promotions that are receiving adjustments here. But if you look at like line, I don't know, I can't see what line it is, but distribution, that department, you'll notice it goes from $7,000 on the class parity up to $24,000 on the tenure parity. So that's a big difference there. That indicates you have several people or maybe many people that have received promotions. Because the more promotions they've received, then again, they would have longer tenure, but less time in their position. And so that's why some departments are going to see big differences and some departments are going to be small differences. It depends on the people in the department.
Ms. Jessie, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So we did this study because we were trying to fight compression. That was our primary reason for doing this. When we made the pay hike to $15 an hour, we were forewarned that there would be compression problems with people that have been tenured. And so which of these classifications fights that compression?
We are recommending the hybrid.
Okay. But
So
with
it's a mix.
with the hybrid, I took a note here. Now, so the hybrid avoids the compression, correct?
None of them avoids compression completely. There still may be some instances, but not widespread if you just do it across the board. When you did the $15 an hour, it really caused people who have been here for a long time to make pretty much the same as somebody coming in the door
So
without regard to their tenure.
So let me ask it this way. I also see, so the hybrid also erases performance gains. Is that what we discussed?
It can erase some performance gains, yes.
So what if we did this, instead of trying to do everything at once,
Mhm.
we're trying to raise people to $17 an hour, but we haven't fought the initial problem which prompted the study, which is compression. How do we reward those people who have been here a long time and those people who have gotten gains in their salary because of performance? Because the problem was, I've been working here 5-10 years. I finally get to $15 an hour. Then all of a sudden, somebody come in for 5 minutes and then they get $15 an hour.
Right. The really good thing about this study is that it's individualized. And I think Councilmember Cook alluded to the implementation piece. So if the three of us work for the city of East Point, it's not going to be you get 17, I get 17, and Peter gets 17. It's going to be you get 17 plus credit for your tenure in your class, your current job, as well as the number of years you've worked for the city. And I think Councilmember Cummings brought that up with an employee who had been employed for 20 years and was pretty much making this just almost the same as someone coming in because of the COLAs that you all have granted over the recent years. But it's individualized. It takes every individual that's impacted and places them according to that criteria.
So, and you find that to be the best would be through the hybrid parity.
Yes. That's our recommendation.
And so the total increase in the budget would be $1.2 million.
We have a slide that shows what it would be at 17. So it would be $508,802.97. And it would impact 144 employees. Again,
That's the bring the minimum hybrid. He was asking about the hybrid parity. That's what
selective
it's-
hybrid approach. So it would address those individuals who were at the lowest end of the pay plan.
So what you're saying is there would be a $500,000 increase to the budget,
Yes,
and the total budget would be the 1.2.
no. The next one, if you did 20, I'm not sure, where did you get the 1.2?
I'm looking
So the
at
1.2 is the hybrid. If we did
Oh,
to
okay.
everybody,
Oh,
not
that's to
select.
everybody.
Correct.
Yeah, this is for select individuals, the ones who were 10% below the pay.
So, okay, so what you're recommending is this bottom approach and not any of these that we see above,
This is the recommendation.
the $500,000.
Yes, sir. That's at $17 an hour.
And it would address the compression of the lower end of the scale.
Yes, sir. And I believe the city manager has talked about, and maybe after some discussion with you, that we would implement this as a first phase, and then we would go back and look at the other employees who would be impacted maybe in another fiscal year.
Okay. Thank you for entertaining my questions so that I can get clarification.
Councilmember Cummings and Councilmember Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can we just go to the one for $20 an hour? I just want to see what those numbers look like
The
really
cost
quick.
or the pay plan?
I'm sorry,
The cost or the pay plan?
the cost. So,
Scroll to this so we can see, yeah.
okay, what's the other one that you showed? The one for $20, the one that had all the different, like with the different departments? I
Oh,
just looked at
yeah,
those
the
numbers.
department
Yeah.
split, yeah.
Yes. Okay. Here we go, right here.
Mhm.
So I just want to write this one down. Hold on, this is it. $17. 20. To bring to the minimum. 1.3, 2.2, 2.6, 3.1. Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
And go back, the one that you just showed me before. I just want to see what those bottom line numbers look like, if you don't mind.
The total cost, I think she's saying. Total cost for
The total
20.
cost, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And, okay, the bottom line is 1.6. This is selective hybrid. Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I yield, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Great presentation. Quick question. The tenure parity, is that considered the best plan?
I would not consider the tenure parity necessarily the best plan.
Okay.
It is the most generous plan. But again, the tenure parity, it gives more money, but it's not always money that you would say would be worthwhile to give. And let me give you an example here. If you had somebody, let's pretend they've been at the city for 20 years, they've just promoted yesterday into a manager role. So they've just promoted, they just got a promotion, they're brand new in their role. If you do the tenure parity approach, they're going to get 20 years of credit in their new role. So they're going to go up near the top of that pay scale, and they might be making more than other managers who had already been managers for 5 years or for 10 years. Who maybe they had not been at the city for 20 years, but they've been at the city for 5 years as a manager. It can cause little bits of inversion like that. The reason we like the hybrid plan is it does still give credit for those 20 years. It would keep that person who got promoted. They wouldn't be at the brand new minimum of the range, but it does a much better job of not advancing people too far into the pay range. So I would not necessarily say the tenure plan is the best. I prefer the hybrid myself.
Not the best, but the most cost.
It is the most cost,
most
yes, and we
costly.
show it, but I think the hybrid is going to be a more accurate representation of fixing compression.
Is that the trend with most municipalities in this particular space or this size?
It is true of most municipalities that are experiencing similar problems to what you are. There is obviously many different things that can be happening in municipalities. So sometimes we have gone into municipalities and we don't find the hybrid is very appropriate. But for those experiencing compression, along with potentially a market differential or a need to move, I think the hybrid is one of your best options.
And I'm somewhat in agreement, but I was just looking at it and it looks
Mm-hmm.
like it's not that much off from the hybrid versus the tenure plan. So
It's not always that far off, but again, the difference is sometimes that money that you're spending, I think you're spending it on people who don't necessarily need to advance as far. So it's not that far off. I would feel very comfortable saying the hybrid, I think, will better target your issues than the tenure will.
okay, thank you very much. I yield, Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Renee.
I was raising my hand. Thank you for your presentation. I think it was very good and very thorough, and it gave me a little bit more insight. It looks like the hybrid parity selection is probably one of the best selection on the board. And I think, Ms. Jessie, I think that's the one that you are agreeing with at this time.
Yes, ma'am.
It looks like it's probably one of the best fits for the city and city employees. And plus, it covers 241 people, which I think is probably the greatest span other than the tenure that will probably make a lot of other people mad based on promotions. But I like the hybrid parity based on the study and the information that you gave today. It clarified a lot more. And it only is 20%, which is not going to throw us out of range. And according to the taxes that we had, I think it will fall right in line with our, the extra funding that we receive for the Fulton County from our taxes. Let me ask you a question, Ms. Jessie. Doing the hybrid parity study, will we also cover in our pension plan? Like we won't be undervalued from the pension plan with this category?
Everything goes up.
Everything. So with the extra funding that we got from our property taxes, the 4 million, would that also help offset the pension, like employee pension as well? Would that also be like, do you understand what I'm saying?
I hear what you're saying, but that's not quite in my lane. That's the finance piece of it.
Okay.
But the pension costs would be computed on the new salaries. So,
and that's understandable. I'm just wanting to make sure that we also cover, because, there's always two components to employee salary. One is the salary and the benefits, and then the other is the pension, to make sure that we're covered on that part as well. So, with the funds, we want to make sure we have a great fiduciary duty to make sure everything is balanced out. We would hate for someone to retire and then the pension is not there for them. So that's why I was asking, like, would that correlate with, well, because we did receive, and we did tell the people that one of the things that we were going to do is to make sure that the salaries were balanced in the city, and the extra funding that we received would go toward that. So, because also policing, fire, everybody's also included in this plan. We want to make sure that the pension is also on that side as well. So when we're raising salaries, we want to make sure that there's equity in both. And I know you're saying that you don't operate on that side. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I yield.
Councilmember Cook.
Thank you, and don't go too far away, Ms. Iris. But one of the things related to pension, I think you're just about right, we're going to have to be a little cautious. But for the statement that was made about $4 million worth of additional tax revenue, that's not correct. Please go back and look at that calculation. Okay? From the previous year, the taxes are only going to go up about $2 million, not 4. It's only an increase of $2 million. Now, getting back to the point here with the total program and what it's going to do for the pension plan, well, I think you and I may find out tomorrow in our next meeting just what type of impact that's going to have. But that is something we have to look at, because one of the things the city is very astute about is making sure we can always handle our minimum municipal obligations. And salaries and pension programs is part of that. Not to mention what this may or may not do to the employees' portion of other benefits. And it may have a minor
Right.
impact on it, and hopefully that it will, kind of a thing. But the other side of this is, do we get a chance to install this in stages or phases as it relates to maybe the employees themselves, starting off at the lower grade, moving up, something along that line?
Yes, sir. The city manager mentioned that he wanted to do this in phases, taking those employees who were at the lowest end of the pay scale now and moving them up. That would be the first phase. And then going back and looking at employees who are sort of in the next group until we've covered all employees.
Well, that has a lot of merit to it in my mind. And the other thing it does is gives us a chance to be exposed to raw spots and have a good crack at correcting those before we go full Monty. I think that's the term they still use. So we can do it in phases and kind of like walk ourselves up to perfection and not have total chaos on the first week.
Yes,
of the new
sir.
program. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Butler.
Thank you, Ms. Iris. Here are my two concerns. The first one is, if we have a supervisor making $18 an hour, and then we're bumping up his report to 17, this is what we tried to avoid the first time. And I wrote down something else too. When we talk about across the board pay grade, what positions are we recommending to get the salary increase?
I don't know if we have a slide in this presentation, but it's generally laborers, the individuals who are customer service representatives over in customer care, electric or the power distribution. We also have equipment operators. We consider frontline employees who are currently 10% below what the market found or recommended.
So when you guys showed us the pay comparisons of other cities, I think that slide is
Yes,
in
that's
there
the
too.
slide here.
I thought we were at the median, or we were at the higher end in terms of what cities or municipalities pay employees. Do you have that slide?
We do have it. Thank goodness we're not the lowest, but we are competitive. But it's not just the starting salaries for the cities, it's within those classifications that we identified.
Where are we? Where, I don't see us.
Not pictured here.
Yes, we're 1545.
Oh,
I think
so
it
we're
might be- is it at the bottom?
1545.
It's on the.
Okay, so here's my opinion. We want to fight the compression issue that was caused.
Yes,
that
sir.
we never solved. By adding another pay increase, I'm concerned that we're causing a compression again, and we're not accounting for some of those other people that when we talk about performance and tenure, and that's where my concern is. So if we're talking about doing this in phases, why would we not tackle the first problem first, which is the compression, then come back and look at how do we do across the board these raises in order that we don't have this problem again? Because if you have a supervisor that's making 18, then someone comes in making 17, that supervisor's gonna feel kind of like they're not taken care of. Or are they in this group that we're talking about?
Here's the list that we're starting with. So once we implement this, as we find other issues in the next phase, those will be impacted. But these positions here are the ones that are at the lowest. On the lowest end of the pay scale. And the highlighted ones, we're not including police and fire at this time because you've given them pay raises in your public safety pay plan, I think, last couple of years. So we're taking the other positions. You have individuals in fleet, your laborers, sanitation, water department. There were several criteria that were used, competitiveness, being able to actually hire people. So we're seeing a scarcity in water technicians, heavy equipment operators, automotive technicians. So all of those were looked at as a part of the study. The harder to fill positions. We knew we had to be more attractive to get people into those positions.
Thank you.
Thank you. I was gonna ask some of the same questions that Councilmember Butler did. So can you give a dollar amount for maybe like one of the positions when you say is at the lowest? Because that was one of my questions. If you raise them to $17 and their supervisor is making $18, that's gonna cause a problem. So is the supervisors in this pay increase or pay scale as well?
We had a form on a sheet on one of the earlier presentations. I don't think it's included in this, but it's like 3 or 4 fold where we actually identified each of the employees who would be impacted. And it shows how much their salaries would increase according to the model that we were recommending. I don't think that we stand the chance necessarily of running into an employee, someone who reports to a supervisor, bumping up against their salary. However, if we do, those are the ones that we would have to take a look at in that next phase.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, and I think maybe this will help if you can answer this. So the same example that they gave, you bring the raise up to $17. There's a supervisor that's been, they make $18. So with the hybrid, usually, I mean, if they're supervised, they may have had some time, they'll have some time in that position as a supervisor. So that will also adjust out. They'll receive some sort of bump in pay because they've been in that position, correct?
That is correct in most cases. Yeah,
And
not
then
every case,
also
but
we-
yes.
And with
most
the hybrid,
cases.
you're also using the time and service so that will give them even more of a bump. So that does spread
Correct.
it out. So they won't necessarily be at $18.
That is correct. The other thing is, Peter, if you can go back to the positions on there, many of the classifications in here, you'll notice too. So just right on, halfway down or whatever, you've got sanitation collector, sanitation driver, sanitation supervisor.
Right.
So if we've got the supervisors included for most of these positions, if the employee is making 17, the supervisor wouldn't be recommended 18. Typically, if the employee's at 17, the supervisor might be at 20 or 21, or whatever the number might be. So it would be very unlikely for any supervisors included in the study would be recommended at least a couple grades difference.
Okay.
And then when we did include the hybrid adjustment for the supervisors, you're correct. That is what would make sure we address and should not run into too many of those compression issues whatsoever.
Okay. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we,
Sure.
okay, so that answers the question. Thank you. I yield.
Can you go back to the starting page for peers? I was trying to see what $17 an hour is, so that's 35,367 and $20 an hour. I guess that's close to the 41,213. Those would be the starting salaries.
Correct.
Any I heard Ms. Jessie say earlier that compression is always an issue. Is that with any adjustment? Is there a way to totally solve for compression?
Totally, as in 100%,
As in
I would say
100%, no compression
probably-
possibility at all.
I would say the data does not exist. You would need to know, every single person's time, every single person's performance, every single person's, every single fact about their employment from the day they started.
So there's not an option that is 100% compression.
Not
resolution.
100%, no.
Okay.
The hybrid is about as good as we can get. It doesn't mean you can't do some individual, double checks and, hey, we've run into one situation, we'll remedy. But the hybrid's about as good as you can get when applying it to all classifications.
And it still has some compression possibilities. within
Some,
it.
that's correct, yes.
And when we went to $15 an hour, I believe we had about 109, 110 employees in the city that were making less than $15 an hour. And the overwhelming majority of them, over 80 to 90%, were at $10 an hour, which was absolutely ridiculous. I think now as we look at, and we've been talking about the compensation study probably since then, paying compensation to resolve for this, which we will never have 100% resolution on compression. I think where we are now, and I want to go back to what we told the people when we approved the millage rate of 13 mills, which resulted in $4,489,154. We said that that money would be used for this, for the compensation, paying compensation, implementation of whatever recommendation of how we want to move forward for that. So that's $4,489,154. At $17 an hour, I think it's 1.2 million. It's 1,209,000 and something. And at the $20 an hour is 2.6 million, almost 2.7 million.
And that's for the full hybrid, not
For the full hybrid, right, at
correct,
241
selective.
employees. And I think the $17 an hour hybrid, full hybrid addresses 241 employees as well, right?
I believe so. Is it?
It is.
Okay, yes.
Okay.
Oh, 214.
Oh, excuse me, reverse it, yeah.
Oh, 214. And the reason it increases is because the minimum is increasing. So you're having more employees that are falling
Fall
within
below there.
that range. And so
That's exactly
you're just a
right.
little bit more employees.
Mhm.
So the question for council, and I think what would be helpful is there've been questions tonight that came about pension, about benefits, about the number of employees impacted, about the potential for an employee to be close to their supervisor. And I think if we could get, like, to be able to see those things at the $17 and the $20, based upon what we told the people, either option is we have the funding to do with the increase in revenue we receive by keeping the millage rate at 13 mills. But I think having more information for the 17, for the 19, at hybrid, it sounds like hybrid parity is what you all are recommending. It sounds like from the comments from council, there's an appetite for that. But having more information about those concerns, pension, benefits, the employees, the proximity to supervisors, at the 17 and the 20 will possibly help us make the final decision. But from an affordability perspective, based upon what we told the people, with the millage rate increase, we could do 17 or 20. But I think there's more information around total costs, right? Because pensions cost, benefits, like there are other costs that goes along with it that would help us make the ultimate decision. How long do you think it would take you all to get that information, Mr. King?
Iris, I think we could probably, looking at your face. You think the next work session?
Probably December.
The next work
December
session?
work session, what is that, December
December 11th.
13th?
The
Is that the 13th? I don't know. Second Monday in December is December 11th.
Yes,
So we
ma'am.
could put it on the December 11th. One else is in December 11th work session. And thank you for tonight. I think this helped a lot. And it helped us kind of decide based on your recommendations, your expertise, like where we should be looking, but that additional information will be helpful.
And Madam Mayor, thank you all because you've actually been talking through your pay philosophy. That's exactly what we would need going forward. Those components of a pay plan that you want to include. So hopefully we don't come back in another few years and say, oh my gosh, we have this compression, we have this issue, because you would have adopted a pay plan philosophy that will guide you through every budget year. So a lot of that you've talked about tonight, and I've made notes, so we'll take a stab at developing a pay philosophy for you to approve.
Okay, sounds
All
great.
right. Thank
Thank
you.
you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, update on city parks, Mr. King.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've got our Shalord Pinkett here, our director, Greg Hart, Dewan. They'll all come forward and give you an overview of their plan as it relates to their park projects and also some other information.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I guess I can do a brief introduction. This is Mr. Greg Hart. We're going to be talking about his domain tonight. Most of you guys are familiar with Dewan, and he possibly will speak on some of the things that we're looking at doing. Before I get into the presentation, I want to actually congratulate Greg. His team fought through all of the COVID issues. My guy to my left did a great job of writing grants. And as you're going to be able to see in the presentation, we've been able to do a lot of amazing things. Even when we're dealing with the priority spending crisis, we have been able to accomplish a lot over the last couple of years since I've been the director in Parks and Recreation. Go to the next one. So what I did with this presentation to try to move it forward is to try to highlight what parks are located in which ward. Obviously, we're going to start here with Ward A. That includes Sumner Park, Conley Nature Trail, and Center Park. The asterisks, we'll get into that when I get to that slide. One of the first things that we attacked during COVID was trying to take advantage of outside recreation and creating trails. I know Mr. Robertson is a big advocate and always out at the trails. As you guys know, we did the Model Mile Trail, the first leg of it. We acquired a grant a few months back that I'm working with Cadell and his team on another connection point from Sumner Park to Virginia Avenue. So we're super excited about that. Sumner Park in 2020, we constructed the dog park, the small and large dog park that was included with ADA accessibility. And that's going to be a topic that we're going to touch on with a lot of our parks. The last month, I've had the chance to attend, along with Dewan, national conventions, as well as most recently our state convention. A lot of our parks, we're looking at adding ADA accessible playgrounds. That is not a new thing necessarily, but it'll be new to East Point to make sure that we're inclusive of everyone being able to participate and play in parks. We painted a roof out there. Greg is currently working on his comprehensive winter plan to touch up a lot of the spaces, so we'll be prepared for the springtime. And then we upgraded the playground floor covering in that park as well. Center Park is the park that I'm looking to start after I finish this most recent project that we're wrapping up in the next 2 weeks, which is Bryant Park. the playground piece that I just spoke of. I've been working close with the Foresight Group, who's currently working on our 10-year master plan. We'll be addressing that playground and adding some new amenities, which will also include ADA accessible playground equipment at that particular site. All right, and Ward B, that consists of Egan Park, John D. Milner, Brookdale, Bryan, River Park, and Colonial Hills. Egan Park was a grant-funded project with Fulton County, along with some capital funds, but we did a complete renovation of that park with ADA accessibility. We're working with the playground vendor now to take a look at all of our city playground equipment to see where we can add ADA accessible playgrounds equipment to the existing parks. We also installed a pavilion structure that you see in the picture as well. John D. Milner Sports Complex. This is pretty much the main hub for a lot of our outdoor programming. Greg's team added backstops for safety, windscreens. We're still working with our budget amendment, hopefully, to repair our concession. If you guys have driven by there on a Saturday, we're probably seeing around 1,300 people a Saturday for about 10 consecutive weeks during our flag football program. We repurposed and came with a new approach with our baseball program. We had almost 200 plus kids playing baseball last year. We're looking at extending that. So a lot of these upgrades were tremendous help. The upgrading of the lights that Sean's team helped out with was awesome from a safety reason, and also with the program of our magnitude, being able to play at night. You know, a lot of people take that for granted, but it looks amazing out there if you guys have ever ridden by there at night. We recently added a fitness wall to our turf surface. I know we've had some conversations about that. We're looking at making it a multi-use space. We're going to actually be able to have a soccer box in that location, the same size as Soccer in the Street. They sit right next to Oz Pizza. Waiting on one more quote to get that addressed, so we'll be able to play soccer. We currently have a soccer program that's actually thriving. So we're faced with the same challenges on what places to practice. Right now, we use John D. Milner Sports Complex for baseball, football, as well as soccer, but we'll have at least one dedicated space that's completely soccer-based, and then we can also repurpose our baseball fields, which we've done in the past. We've done some landscaping, additional seating, repaired batting cages. All right, Brookdale Park. More recently, we just finished doing the tennis courts. Pickleball is a new craze. I know Ms. Bailey is a big advocate and participant of that, but we have currently one of the best pickleball facilities, believe it or not, probably in Metro Atlanta area, along with what you'll see that we've done at Sykes Park. But the tennis court remodel is beautiful. One of the things that we're looking to add is to resurface Sumner Park's tennis court to include pickleball as well. All right, Bryan Park is the project that we're probably about a week and a half away from completing. I'm not sure if you guys have ridden by there, but it looks amazing. That park was on the verge of going underwater. Whenever we had a tremendous amount of rain, the water was so heavy, it would come out into the street. So we were able to try to address that ground to build it up. We're also looking at adding ADA accessible playground equipment to this park. But now we have 2 volleyball courts. We've been partnering up with Tri-Cities to try to support their Growing Girls program. So there's going to be a great opportunity for DeJuan's team to partner with Tri-Cities so the girls can have another place to play volleyball. River Park was also a Fulton County CDBG project that addressed erosion, lack of seating. As you can see, the playground is fairly new out there. We did a Kaboom grant when Mr. Penn was here. So the playground equipment is brand new out of this park. We do a lot of collaborative things with River Park between the after-school program over at the elementary school. Park Lane, I'm sorry, over at River Park. Colonial Unity Park was also a Fulton County funded CDBG project with some capital funding that we used. The biggest issue at this park was the bridge that you see in the picture. You weren't able to cross that bridge prior to us working on that park, but we addressed a lot of the erosion issues, ADA accessibility to be able to access the park from multiple positions. So that park is actually a beautiful project that we completed. All right, Ward C includes Sykes Park and Ranton Park. Sykes Park, obviously, is a beautiful park, a park that I grew up near. We added 3 new bike trails in that particular park. Greg's team has worked on some landscaping around a few of the pavilions. And over the wintertime, we'll be painting the pavilions that sit in the lower section of that park. We're also hoping to resurface that particular tennis court. We have a very thriving and active tennis community with youth and adults. And as I again mentioned, pickleball, we're looking to upgrade that space to have dedicated pickleball courts. So that would give us the largest access to pickleball here in Metro Atlanta. We also fixed the basketball courts over at Ranton Park. I'm hoping out of the 10-year master plan, we could come up with some new design concepts to add to that particular park. But in the meantime, it was some functioning things that we needed to address, which was the actual pavilion roof, additional seating and picnic benches. So super excited to see the results of the 10-year master plan. All right, Ward D. Ward D obviously is one of those particular areas in the city where we need to have facilities. Happy to say that we started the solicitation process for a new recreation center. Hoping to give you guys updates on that coming December. Commerce Park is another area that I'm working with Cadell on to try to make that a multi-purpose field use where we can actually have flag football games, play soccer, picnic tables, or what have you. All right, so right now we're probably about 40% done with the 10-year master plan. We have a few more things we're finishing up with the GIS team here, and we'll start our community meetings to get input on what residents would like to see at the parks in their neighborhoods and have some design concepts on some things that we can do. The good thing about it, we've taken advantage of these last 2 to 3 years to get a lot of the functioning things that we're breaking down in our parks to get addressed. So we're looking forward to see the results of that and also obviously receiving community input. I'm going to have DeJuan speak a little bit to about what we're doing from a outreach standpoint that we plan on doing in the first quarter of next year.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and Council. We're happy about what we're looking at going into the first quarter of next year. First quarter of next year, we really want to make an impact in the community in each ward. So we want to meet with you guys individually and set up some events that we could possibly do in you all's ward, get some feedback from the citizens of each ward at their HOA meetings, and just come out and make sure we have a good time, block party in each ward. Just bring some of the game and some of the park to them, especially in like Ward D, where we don't have a park or we don't have a facility, somewhere where we can come out, bring out some games, probably play in a parking lot, a field, wherever it is, have some fun, cook out some music, and give them an opportunity to experience what we do here at Parks and Rec. Also, the other component of that, we're big on education, is we want to make sure we bring out STEM trucks so they can come out and get some educational pieces as well while we're out having fun and addressing the needs of those communities. So we look forward to meeting with you all in the future. We'll probably roll those out starting in January, those individual meetings, and we look forward to having fun.
All right, here to answer any questions that you all may have.
Councilmember Shropshire. Ooh. Oh.
Thank you. So when are you going to get started on Sumner Park and Center Park?
Get started on Sumner Park. Okay, so with Sumner Park, in the budget amendment that you guys will see tonight, I'm hoping that I'm able to receive the funds to address that tennis court. I know the park signs has been issued in multiple parks. In the budget amendment request, we're asking for funds to actually put new signage in about eight of our parks this go around. And I'm really going to be attacking the parks that are most heavily used. And then FY25 ask would be to do the rest of the parks as well with the signage.
So speaking of signage, I know we talked about changing the time on the sign.
Yeah, that's what I need to, because those signs,
Okay.
you know what I mean? I need to
Now,
kind of know
when you
before I
say
design them.
addressing the tennis court,
Yes.
that's fine.
Mhm.
What I'm talking about is the playground equipment, far as the playground equipment, the pavilion, the tables, the benches, those things, because I know they were split, falling apart. Up under the pavilion was not clean. It was just not clean. So what are you gonna do to bring in so when are you gonna start with the new equipment in that park?
Okay, let's speak to what we've done.
Yes.
Oh,
thus
and
far,
one more question. And I
I'm
know
sorry.
when we did the Rose Garden, we talked about that pavilion.
Mhm.
So is that included in the plan for us fixing that up?
Okay, so in my FY25 request, those things will be addressed. The playgrounds, as I mentioned earlier, is going to be one of my biggest focus for FY25.
So see
Now, regarding, go ahead.
here's my problem right here.
Okay,
We fixed up every park in Ward B.
Mhm.
We didn't fix up any park in A and C.
in A and C,
Every time you brought, it was always parks in Ward B. It was almost like the parks in Ward A were forgotten about. It's just like Sykes Park.
okay,
So I don't want to wait to FY25. We should have spreaded the money and fixed those parks up instead of focusing on one area.
okay. So in regards to Ward A, I've been pretty much operating on grant funding. So with the grant funding from Fulton County in particular, I'm only able to attach that money to a complete project. So when I took over the job, a lot of the grants were already attached to certain parks that was just sitting there and it was about to expire. So when I became the director, I started completing the grants that were already attached to certain projects before they expired. As particular with Ward A, we have been able to address the trail. Hold on, go back. So with Ward A, with Sumner Park, we put the dog park over there. We're hoping to actually resurface the tennis court with the budget amendment. Greg actually repaired the rooftop on a pavilion that sits on the top side. And were you able to put any park benches out there?
Yes, we have new benches, trash receptacles. We are currently waiting on a complete PO. We're going to extend the fence. We had some concerns about the fence, so we are going to extend that for the drop off that we had with citizens. So we're going to repair that. We've done the rooftops. We did the painting on the pavilion. Got brand new tables there. And as to speak on the Rose Garden, I don't know when the last time you guys may have driven by there, but we have repaired the decayed wood that was on there, fixed the benches on that. We're now pressure washing all the circles and whatever that is. We're pressure washing that, cleaning that up. So once all that dries and come back, whatever, we're gonna add some benches out there, some receptacles out there. And if you want some tables, we can get you a table out there on the side or somewhere. But we are going to paint once everything is dried out. So we're going to come back and paint and you know, complete that project. But if there's anything else you would like to see out there, you know, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll speak to you. All right, back at Sumner Park. As I mentioned before, the Fulton County grant funds, we attempted to put those funds to address that softball field. It was deemed as historical, so we had to actually move those funds to a park that Fulton County found accepting of it. Conley Nature Trail, we added another mile of trails in there that we finished back in the spring. Beautiful site, it connects to the existing trail. And Center Park is going to be addressed in the first quarter of next year. So those are your Ward A parks. So a lot of times working with these grants, Fulton County has certain criteria. They don't allow me to parse the money up. They actually apply the money to a full project that they accept. But as I mentioned, I'm hoping with the budget request that we're making, some of the functioning things that you're asking for, I will have the funding to be able to address some of those things. So that's where we are with that as it pertains to Ward A.
Councilmember Butler and Councilmember Gordon and Councilmember Bailey. Councilmember Gordon and Councilmember Bailey.
Thank you. Director Pinkett, thank you so much. My question is about your slide for Ward D, where you mentioned South Commerce Park. Now, when I first got on council, Director Penn had a project underway, and I was working with him and probably other staff. That project was deemed to be unsafe by Chief Gardner and Director Penn for safety reasons due to tractor trailer traffic. I guess what we're wanting to know is what has changed, because when that project was, I guess, I don't want to say abandoned, but transitioned to the PATH project, it was on a state level for some review. So is that process underway, or are we not needing to do that type of review by the state to have a park at this location? And has anything changed in terms of safety? Because that's why they shifted from that project in transition to the PATH.
So the information I gathered from Mr. Penn, the civil engineering was done at that particular site. I got with Cadell Hall. They had existing plans. Now, I was not familiar with those discussions. I think that was probably back in 2016, maybe? Yeah, around 16 to 17. I can dig into that a little bit further, but we do have some concepts and some ideas that we would like to do. But we are familiar with what's around that park. But we're looking mostly for areas of more practice, games type of situations. Maybe not necessarily with the basketball court and some of the things that we're looking at doing because of the location of that park. But I can definitely look into that a little bit more to find out what happened back in 17.
Okay. Well, yeah, I think it was 2016.
16. Okay.
Yeah, and I know Councilmember Ann Douglas, that was a near and dear space to her. She really wanted to see that happen. It started a little before me, and then we tried to transition. But I guess my biggest concern is that I know the police department had conducted whatever type of study necessary regarding the traffic and the safety. So I just want to make sure it's a safe in that regard. So, because that's what I remember when they presented to council, it was the police chief as well as Director Penn. And that's why they decided not to move forward with that and shift it. But just want to make sure we're okay and safe.
Yeah, I can get with the chief on that.
Okay.
To find out.
Councilmember Butler and Councilmember Bailey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to inquire about the $500,000 we spent for the Georgia Soccer Park and our access to that park. Could you tell us about that and how we can use that park?
Yeah, so our soccer program obviously took a hit when COVID occurred. So what we're trying to do now is have access to it, because in the agreement, we were allowed to use their facilities. Our soccer programs, I'm not sure where we are with numbers with that program. We have roughly about 100 kids. So we've been primarily partnering with Soccer in the Streets, but we're actually looking at starting our own soccer league. So with all that being said, we're looking at utilizing that agreement for our kids to play soccer over there. It only can occur at this point certain times of the year because they don't have the lights to be able to do fall and winter soccer. But this spring, we're definitely looking at transitioning our existing kids. Once the daylight savings changes over, we can actually utilize this space in the agreement for our kids to be able to play.
And regarding the rec center that Councilwoman Gordon and I have been pushing for,
yes,
we're glad that. Tell us what's going out for bid now, and can you give us a brief timeline as to how things will be progressing?
Oh, it's probably to speak to procurement with Derman, but from my understanding, we should be able to update you on that in December. But it is out for architectural and design work now. So I'll be coming back here in a couple of weeks to kind of let you know where we are with that.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Bailey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you all for the presentation. Very exciting, everything you have going on, especially going to the HOAs and neighborhood associations to get their input and bringing a lot of the recreation to the neighborhoods. That's really exciting, and that you all are involved in academics. So you have an academic bowl coming up.
Yeah, on Friday night.
So that's great. Just want to talk about a couple of things. One is Center Park area.
Yes.
There's an area where their signage is. I wonder if that could be a mini park. This actually came from the residents when I attended their neighborhood association meeting. It's a,
Is it right off of Washington Road?
no, it's, I think that might be Taylor, right there.
Yeah. So it's
And
at the stop sign, right, when you're leaving center, going up towards Main Street,
Correct.
right there.
It's
Yeah.
an open area.
Okay.
And it's a good way to congregate, and that could be just an additional park area for that, what is that? Pocket park.
Okay, so that particular area right now is not maintained by us. So I guess through the networking between the departments, you guys talking and working it out, because the Building and Grounds Public Works maintain that right now.
Okay.
So as far as, changing the codes and being able to build a park, I mean, I guess that,
Have that discussion.
yeah, we have to have that
So maybe in
discussion.
your 10-year plan,
Mhm.
because I noticed that it's kind of skewed with the parks, but we love parks in Ward B, but I was wondering, that could be an additional part. I don't even know if it's A or B, but it doesn't matter. But
Well, I know
that could be
there used to be a house that sat there.
Oh.
And so it was demolished through the 50 Worst program.
Okay, so it's
Yeah.
not,
So it
it's
became,
not
it
our
was,
property.
yeah, it was just a lot. It was a lot,
Okay,
from that 50 Worst program
gotcha.
years ago.
Okay.
Now, in regards to green spaces, that is something that we're looking at with the 10-year master plan.
Okay.
So a lot of just the blank green spaces, those are areas that we could kind of be creative. As of recently, we are over cultural affairs for the city as well. So Mr. Swain now is a part of our team. So in some areas, we've been doing some research about green spaces to put public art in those spaces. So it's pretty exciting times for us to kind of, add more beauty to East Point and some of the vacant green space areas.
And I know you mentioned you're going to the neighborhood association meeting, so
Yes.
perhaps you could go to Center Park first and hear their input.
Yeah, they're up to bat.
Absolutely.
Yeah, within the next couple of weeks.
And then my other question is about Unity Park, just getting input from the residents. Is it possible to have a tennis court out there? Is it space for that?
That parking lot is not, that's a tough.
No, that's not the city's.
Yeah, that's not,
That-
well,
that-
yeah.
Again, that used to be a church that sat there on that property in that open lot, what you see.
Okay.
And I guess, with a little homework, find out who owned that, and, anything is possible, but right now it's a private owner to that property that sits there.
Okay.
And, we just try to keep our stuff on our side
Absolutely.
as much. Yeah.
Okay, I'll just report back. I know they have a HOA meeting tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay.
Neighborhood association meeting. I can talk to them about it.
Right.
Thank you.
All right.
Are you, Madam Mayor?
Thank you. From what I recall about the South Commerce Park, Duke wanted to buy more property in that area, which was gonna increase truck traffic in that area. I don't know if they eventually actually did that, but there was a unilateral decision to stop moving forward on a decision that council had authorized them to actually move forward a long time ago to actually construct South Commerce Park. So I'm not aware of that security conversation. Maybe I missed that meeting, but if you could find that information out. I recall this being unilaterally stopped after it was approved to go forward. So I'm glad to see that you're exploring ways to make this go forward, because there's absolutely no park in Ward D at this point. As it relates to the new recreation facility, so in order to get architectural designs, we have to tell them what we want to see or what we want included. So what is the RFP indicating should be included in these designs? Like, what type of facility are we asking for an architecture to come in and design for us? Usually we have to put more information in that to specifically say what we're looking for, and if there's specificity in there, how do we get to those determinations as to what it would be?
Okay. Okay.
Well, the architect, once he comes on board, will definitely have to meet with you as a body and discuss what would you like to see in it. There's the opportunity, if you choose, that he can have meetings with what they call charrettes, give you some examples of some types of facilities that have been built that fit what you're looking for. And so normally what they'll do, because they'll get in that aspect of trying to get an idea of what it is you want to see as far as the architecture, what you want to see in it, and then they'll go from there and then provide for input from the mayor, council, and the body in terms of what you like to see there, and then also community, depending on what you want to do in terms of having community input and charrettes and things of that nature as well. So that'll be the first thing they do as part of their kickoff.
I guess I'm just used to projects moving differently. Like, it seems a little backwards to ask an architect to come in. Like, what are we going to select them on? Like, is it a request for qualifications?
Well,
Or if it's a request for a proposal?
I can give you some insight in regards to what we're looking at.
And
Some
what
of-
are
some of
they
your
proposing?
some of your traditional things, obviously, your basketball courts, indoor track, weight room. We're looking at adding STEM labs, community rooms, open event space, kitchen, things of that nature. Some type of aquatic feature possibly. So we're looking at a lot of your traditional things that will be in recreation centers.
Is the request for proposal open and out now? Can somebody send it to me so I could see what we're actually asking for? Because I'm not sure if it's really what the community has indicated. It's good to know that there will continue to be more community input around this, but it's, how is this rec center going to be funded?
Well, right now, we're also looking at possibly doing some bond financing for it. We already talked with the bond council about that. That's one way, but that would be something we have to bring back to you for your review. Depending on what we have in there too, it could be revenue bond finance, because there's some things we're going to do that'll be open to the public, some that you can rent it out for. So we're kind of just start that discussion as a possibility, and so that's something that that our bond representatives and whoever we bring on board has said that they can bring that as an option to move forward for funding.
So if we're talking about doing bond financing, revenue bonds, we don't have to get a referendum. If it's general obligation bonds, we would have to, if the city is doing it. Are we looking at the building authority as the agency to do bond financing? Mr. King, like, if we're doing bond financing,
Yes,
are
ma'am.
is it gonna be through the building authority? Is that the city's issuing bond?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, Mayor. There would be through the building authority that we look at. We kind of just start that discussion, so that would be something that we would definitely do, assemble them and have that discussion through that process, and then come back with a recommendation.
Okay, Councilmember Butler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Also, for the record, before COVID happened, didn't we have meetings with the neighborhood to outline some of the things that we want to see in the recreation center? I think we had 2 or 3 meetings.
Yeah, I was a part of, I think, the one right before the shutdown. So I was a part of that meeting. Yes.
And I know the previous city manager also wanted to consider using hotel motel revenue in order to pay for the park. Is that right?
Yes, we have that as an option too. We could, as far as to put in that whole package too. So that is something we could definitely use.
Okay. I'm looking forward to us getting a pool in East Point. You know, we've gone almost a whole generation without a pool.
Okay.
And what some of my colleagues talk about spending money in their area, we don't have one park in Ward D. So this has to be a top priority. Look at our list. We got 1.5 parks over here.
It's not even existing.
I'm excited as well.
Exactly. That's not even right. That's not even a park. Yeah, thank you.
All right, I don't see any other lights. Anything else before we go to the audit and financial update? All right, Mr. King, thank you, staff.
Thank you.
Thank you, staff. Thank you, guys. All right, from this time, currently the auditor and finance team is working on FY22 audit. There is an estimation of being completed about the first week of December. He has indicated that he will be prepared to come and meet at a later date. He normally comes and meets with the finance team during the time of which he is ready to provide a closing update for you all. So that could be something that we could set a date for. Also, the FY23 solicitation is now out. It's due to close in the next couple of weeks. We'll look to bring forward a recommendation for that at the December work session, so as to get that moving forward as well. And so we're currently in the role now where we're trying to move that process along so that we can hit the ground running, so that once we're done with FY22, then staff can move right into FY23 and get that started as well with the selected auditor for that as well. Madam Mayor, Council.
So this item is also about all of the other findings that in the presentation from the previous auditor. So where are we with our bond rating?
We met with Moody's on Friday. Moody's has indicated that they will be reinstating our rating. They did indicate that since we're so close to getting done with FY22, they said, well, let's just send that in and then they'll reinstate it. And so initially they said, well, we'll do FY21. They said, well, since you're going to be done with the next several weeks, let's just get that in. And then once we get that in, reinstate your rating. And then we won't need to have to see anything from you till next year, maybe June or sometime. But they said to just, well, let's go ahead and get that in since we're that close to having FY22 done, and then they'll bring that in. We're also looking to have a meeting with S&P. The person who was a contact for the finance team may have moved on to another position. So we're looking to reach out to the finance director, and then our finance team will set up a meeting with them as well and give you an update on the S&P side of it.
I thought S&P was still intact.
It is.
That's what
it is,
I've been
it is.
consistently told.
It is intact, but we just want to meet with them anyway. They kept, it is intact, but we do want to meet with them just so as to just keep touch with them.
So what's the rating with S&P?
It's a AA plus, I believe, right now.
Now, I see another council member's light right now, so I'll stop my question to go to Councilmember Gordon.
Just a point of clarity. I got a little lost. So you're stating that Moody's will reinstate after they receive the FY 2022, or you're saying they are doing it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
They initially said to the finance team they were going to do it on the 10th, but once they knew we were that close to getting done with FY22, they said, well, since you're that close, we want to just go ahead and have you send FY22 in, and that way, when you get that in, that rating will remain intact, and then we'll wait till you finish with your normal audit process for FY23. And so, yes, they were initially going to do that. They said, well, since you're 3 weeks or so away, let's just get FY22 in, and then once we get that in, they'll reinstate our rating.
One more question. And that rating is currently?
I'm almost, Shannon, come up. I'm just gonna make sure. I think is it AA minus? What is it? They're AA plus. Make sure I'm correct.
I believe the rating for Moody's is a AA. With S&P was a AA. I'm sorry, a AAA. They had upgraded the rating from our previous rating. And once we provided the FY21 audit to them, or the draft of that audit report, they reinstated that rating. AA3, I believe it is.
Councilmember Cook,
Okay. Just briefly, since I know you're in the process of publicizing the CAFRA for 2021, are we going to get, City Manager, are we going to get a summary presentation from the audit firm?
Yes, sir. They're
When
going
is
to
that
come.
scheduled?
Yes, sir. I think that's the next finance committee, or is it the next meeting for that?
Most likely to be December Budget and Finance Committee meeting.
All things considered, what we've gone through in months, would you consider maybe extending that and not just do the Budget Finance Committee, but the entire full council?
Yes, sir. In fact, I actually mentioned that to him. I said, you might as well just come to the council as well. So I've already put that in his mind on Friday when we saw him, that I would just come to the council meeting as well as to the finance committee meeting.
And my personal request, even though I may not be allowed it, is just to make sure the summary statement is digested so everybody leaves the room with the same understanding. And any other particular highlights worth mentioning that's brought up too.
Yes, sir. He'll be prepared. So we'll tell him the December, would you prefer the probably the council meeting? Do you want to try the first? Which meeting would you want us to, which would you prefer? The first one? Could you do the first one? December 4th or December 11th? 7th.
Yeah, I'll communicate with the
11th?
auditor to
We'll tell him.
prepare for that.
Okay. Now just, we've had so much misinformation floating around. I would like to just make sure everybody has the opportunity to ask any questions that they may still have in the back of their head. And doing it with the full council takes that burden off of the Budget Finance Committee.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank
We'll tell him to come. We'll come to that as well as the finance.
Councilmember Shropshire.
Thank you. My question is, when will have they gave a date as to when the audit will be complete? Maybe I missed it.
No, he didn't want to say the exact date, but he felt confident that it would be sometime around the beginning of the month of December. There was a staff person he had that couldn't come back to projects, so they had to do a reassignment. So that's why he had to juggle a little bit of the dates on that, because that person was on the team that worked on FY21. So he didn't want to say the exact date, but he feels pretty confident that it'll be sometime around the beginning of December or so.
Sometime around when?
I would say I don't want to say the exact date because I know he got nervous when we say the exact date, but he felt pretty good that he could get it done around sometime toward the beginning of December. He just couldn't say the exact date.
The beginning.
He couldn't
of
say the
December.
exact date though. He wasn't.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, so initially I was told the end of November for FY22. So it looks like now we're moving into December. I think it would be helpful. I kind of mentioned this offline, but I'm gonna say it on the record. It would be helpful to get a written history of our bond rating for Moody's and Standard & Poor's from January of 2022 to present, so that we can be clear about where we stand and we make sure we have that accurate information. So I don't know how that happens and how you all request that, but we need something in writing about the history of our bond rating with S&P and Moody's. And then do we have any updates on the appeal to the insurance company? Because this again is about the audits. It's about recovery of the funds, the criminal investigation as it relates to that, and then the independent auditor and whistleblower, which were other recommendations within that report. I think knowing when the forensic audit is going to start is going to help us, because council has indicated a desire to amend the charter pursuant to home rule to have an independent auditor position to report to council. But the details of that, I think the forensic auditor in their either proposal is where I saw the information about their experience and ability, possibly around helping with some guidance around independent auditing. So are there any updates on the insurance appeal as it relates to the recovery of the $785,090? And I know our police chief is going to come in and give an update on policing, so I'll just ask him about those questions when he comes in for his update regarding the criminal investigation of this matter.
Yes, ma'am.
Do we have any updates on the appeal of the insurance decision?
Not from Travelers yet, Madam Mayor, but we'll try to see if we can get something for next week, but they haven't given us any update as of yet.
All right, let me hurry up and get the update on policing is actually next. I will take items 41, 42, and 43 after this update on policing, so we can get our chief back to that. And then we will go through the other items on the previous agenda.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Chief Buchanan can come up and give our update on policing for us. Thank you, Chief.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, City Manager, City Attorney. Give you a quick update on policing. Y'all sent to consent today the lease for Washington Road Precinct. That is a big plus for us because we've always had an office there. The problem is it didn't have central air and heating. It didn't have restrooms. So they are voluntarily giving us another office so we can actually start staffing that precinct, which is critical for us. Also, we have a couple officers that's in the reserves, the military reserves. They're being activated. So about 3 or 4 people being activated, and they're going to be gone for about a year just because of what's going on. They're going to Syria. We have a new communications director, finally, thank God. We needed one very bad, but our communications director is our E911 center. Her name is Glancy Clay. She started about 3 weeks ago. She's very experienced, so you're going to see a lot better quality of services from our 911 operators and things of that nature. Also, I was talking to interim permanent wings about the squatters. We're meeting with Representative Major Denard, who worked with the Sheriff's Department in terms of addressing squatters. So he is going to speak on that some more, but we're also meeting with them tomorrow to see what we can do to kind of clean up the city better. Also, last but not least, we arrested several people breaking in cars. Unfortunately, they've been juvenile, so I'm going to caution you again. With the juvenile court system, they're going to release them. They're not even going to take them. They're going to give them back to their parents if they don't acquire 12 points, which is very difficult to do for nonviolent crimes. So I would just tell people, please leave your cars empty. These juveniles out here are just taking up crimes of opportunity, but we are making several arrests.
Councilmember Robertson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for the update. And this is an ongoing echo. And again, you did report on what I was about to talk about, the car break-ins. It's just every single day it seems to happen throughout East Point and this throughout the metro area. What I'm hearing is that, is there any way that we can have more night patrols in the communities going up and down the streets? Not saying that it's not enough, but that's what the citizens are saying. They just want to see police more on the streets, and or not see them because they want to see them at night, want them to be patrolling at night. There is an epidemic with the youth, and it has to go outside of, say, just police. We need to have some type of community type of programming for them, some way to help them. This is going to take a village because it's an epidemic. We've been talking about some of the robberies and things that's been going on, and it just peaks up, and every time it goes back to some of the young people. And we need to figure out how to embrace them, let them know that we see them, and hit them on another pathway. But thank you for the report. If we can figure out a way to have more police at night, hit some of the streets, and that's what I'm hearing out in the community. But continue the good work, but they do want to see the police more, or not see them, but have them drive up and down the street at nights. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I want to give you a quick update. So the juveniles who were arrested all been at night. We started a detail just for car break-ins. We caught one this past weekend. We caught another the previous weekend. And matter of fact, at the Taco Pete, we talked about that. We arrested that gentleman, but he was also with a juvenile. They let him out in a week for armed robbery, but we re-arrested him because we was able to link more crimes to him. So that's the kind of situation we're dealing with, but we'll definitely put him in jail.
And just to follow up, we are familiar with what happened on Main Street, one of the stores, when they came in there, jumped over the counter, robbed them, but then they came back the same week wearing the middle school uniforms on there, so we know what school they go to. We know they're young people, but it's problematic because that's an impact on the small business. That young lady had lost 2 employees because they can't work there now because they're young people working there too. When these young kids come in there, I saw the video. I know you've seen this, 2 of them, and when they jumped over that counter, I was just looking at it and I was scared.
And we
So,
know who they are because
yeah.
they're juveniles. They went to the little
Right,
middle school here.
right.
And the problem is they see this stuff on TV, all these mob crimes where a bunch of juveniles run into a store, grab something and run, things of that nature. So we put more patrol on Main Street because we don't want that happening in any of our businesses.
I saw a program in another municipality called Adopt a Cop, and then they have one with the schools where they come in once a month to different schools and they have conversation with them. They're trying to break down the barriers of community, more community aspect. And sometimes in those small communities, it works out, especially the Adopt a Cop. Each neighborhood associations adopts a cop, and they come in, they have conversation, they create a community atmosphere. But the school is a spot that we need to also focus on because, again, our young people, we need some type of wraparound programming for them. And that's not your job, it's the community's job. But we need to keep this conversation alive. I yield. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Cook, Councilmember Shropshire.
Chief, just briefly, you mentioned personnel changes in the 911 area. Have we been able to, over the last few years, make any improvement in the mobile phone situation?
Yes. So the great news is Ms. Clay is actually an administrator for what they call Rapid SOS. So let me just give you a quick description. When a person calls the police on the cell phone, and this is a free service, and we didn't have it, but she spoke with us about it. Cobb County spoke with us about it, and we implemented it. But she's an administrator for it, so it just makes it better. So when you call the police on a cell phone, a lot of times the police don't know your exact location because you're not on a landline. Well, with Rapid SOS, and we work with IT to get everything upgraded, you now can actually physically see where the person is. So if I call on my cell phone, I connect with 911, it shows 911 operators exactly where you are. Because a lot of times a person are not familiar with the area, or they're trying to describe an area, but we just don't know where they are. So we have made leaps and bounds in the last year with that.
And that was part of the problem. The other problem is I know where I am. I'm in East Point, but I'm outside using my cell phone calling 911, and I would get Atlanta.
I will tell you, unfortunately, the Rapid SOS does not address that issue because that actually goes on what cell phone tower you hit. So that will continue to be an issue. The good news is once that call is transferred, we now can see where they are still. And before we couldn't.
Thank you. My question is, have you had any more problems with the squatters in Heritage Park?
Last time we checked, which was about a month ago, we didn't have any squatters there. We went door to door to call the company out. We didn't have any squatters there. We're about to do it again just before Christmas. So in December, we've already scheduled it. So hopefully we won't have any squatters there. From what I understand, we only have a couple squatters that's possibly off of Kingfisher. It hadn't been confirmed, but I just spoke with interim city attorney, and we have a plan to make sure whether or not they are supposed to be there legally. So that'll be happening very soon. No problem.
Chief Buchanan, my question is that we received the grant funding for the cameras. Can you give us an update on those cameras that we are receiving?
Yes, so we just sent them an email. We're waiting for them to release the funds. They asked us to make one small change. We made that 2 weeks ago. So I'm hoping this month we can go ahead and move forward and get this done because we've already got the vendors in place. I wanted this done ahead of time, but the state kind of working not as fast as I want to. Let's just say that.
Councilmember Gordon.
Thank you, Chief. I have 2 questions. One, let's be clear, Kingfisher's not in Heritage Park. I just wanted to make sure that's.
I'm sorry, thank you. No, yeah, right.
Kingfisher's in Lakeside Preserve, and I have 3 residents who have been complaining to Councilmember Butler and I for a moment. So thank you for finally being able to get on top of that. It's been a while, and they've been rotating from house to house to house over there. Um, In addition to that, switching subjects a little bit, but Brookview Elementary School, I know that you've put forth valiant effort to get that camera approved, the speed detection camera there. I do know for a fact, just being there constantly in recent weeks, speed is a tremendous issue there. So I'm looking forward to that happening. Do you have just an estimate of a timeline where we might see some installation there?
That probably full implementation probably by January. I just spoke with Dr. Looney tonight, actually, about the speed cameras, and I'm meeting with him to pick up the contract. So he just needed to sign the contract. He wanted an MOU of understanding with the police department, so that's not an issue. So we just spoke tonight about that, and it's already been approved. So he said he'll sign it this week.
So a couple things, Chief. I live in Lakeside Preserve, so thank you for following up on the concerns that were shared with squatters and keeping me updated as to what's happening as we work to ensure that that situation is resolved in my neighborhood. As it relates to the audit, do you have any updates on the Secret Service investigation or district attorney's investigation as it relates to the cyber attack?
So I do know now that they have indicted federally 6 offenders through the Secret Service New Jersey office. In terms of our district attorney's office, they've been very, I don't want to say tight-lipped, but they're keeping the investigation very close. I'm actually reaching out to Madam DA Willis tomorrow about this. I spoke with her briefly Friday, but we didn't speak about that. We talked about another matter, but I did explain I need to speak to you about what's going on with this investigation. So hopefully we'll have something tomorrow.
And is that information about the federal indictment of the 6 people, is it public? Does it reference our, what happened in our case? Is there any direct connection that we see?
So I will tell you, with those 6 individuals as of now, there's nobody from our city that's been investigated. This is a part of like a multinational group that just was conning people all over the place. But I do want to make it clear that's a separate from what's going on with the city. So it's 2 separate investigations.
No, I understand that, but is the Romano in the know? Like, is there any connection to the company that was
No, I'm sorry.
alleged company, the named
No,
entity?
no, not according to the Secret Service. They advised me no. They advised no.
Councilmember Renee asked about the cameras from the state grant, and so I see items number 10 and 15 on the agenda, and so it's probably a good time to have that discussion in the event that Chief is needed for them, so that once we finish this update, so we're kind of transitioning into those other items, so we can address those. And so I don't think there's anything else on the agenda, Chief, that would potentially come your way. You just gave an update to on the squatter situation. And so if we could talk about the cameras at East Point gas stations and security cameras at high-risk businesses in East Point.
So once I met with Councilman Star Cummings, I met with Councilman Sharon Swapshire. We both all collectively, individually, but collectively spoke about this. We looked at the DeKalb County ordinance. They have a couple issues with their wording, and they're now being sued. So we changed that wording. We sent that to Attorney Weems. He's also combined and drafted that I believe he sent to you all today, correct?
That's correct. I looked at the ordinance that have been drafted by, I think, Councilwoman Cummings, and took out the literature that had to do with the lawsuit in DeKalb County, and put it back together. And then I sent it over to everyone. And I believe Councilman Shropshire, also assisted with that, was part and parcel of that. But I wanted to make sure that I took out the parts that were concerning.
Chance to look at it, Ken. Madam Deputy City Clerk, can you pull it up?
Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Shropshire, do you have it, Madam Deputy City Clerk, or do I need to email it to you? Okay. Councilmember Shropshire.
Thank you. So just to make sure there were no major changes, because I know we went over the ordinance when I met with you all, but there were no major changes to it, just the changes that you said that DeKalb County was being challenged on, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and there's no fee that the city is paying for high-risk business or gas stations. We're not paying for their cameras, they're paying for their own cameras, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.